I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. Hey y'all, it's Kate from Little Apothecary, and today we're going to talk about The Good Neighbor, the life and work of Fred Rogers, which is written by Maxwell King but narrated by LeVar Burton. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I listened to the audiobook version of this, like I said, narrated by LeVar Burton, and it was so good. I went into this with not knowing a whole lot about Mr. Rogers. Unlike a lot of other people, I didn't really grow up watching him. I grew up on reading Rainbow with LeVar Burton. I didn't really get into a lot of the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Sesame Street, those kinds of shows. I didn't really get into those. I was all about the reading, and as soon as LeVar Burton, showed me the adventures of reading and the joys of reading, that was all I wanted to do. But I love LeVar Burton, and when I saw that he was narrating this, I thought it would be absolutely fantastic, and I was not wrong. So this is the first full-length biography of Fred Rogers, of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It draws on original interviews, oral histories, and archival documents tracing Rogers' personal, professional, and artistic life through decades of work, which is perfect because from what I learned through reading this book, Mr. Rogers used personal interviews, oral histories, and archival documents in his own TV shows. So it was absolutely genius that all of these were together in his biography. And yes, decades. He was on TV for decades. At one point, he went away from children's television and he created a show just for adults. It didn't do as well as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but he still did it because he felt like he needed to do it. And then he came back to children's television after he realized adult television wasn't for him. So what worked for me? A couple things. First, this was a true account of Mr. Rogers. This wasn't a, let's just talk about everything great about Mr. Rogers and ignore all the bad stuff, all of the mistakes that he's made, his mistakes he made growing up and as an adult, all of that. No, we got a clear description of Mr. Rogers. We got the good and the bad, and I believe from what I've learned, again, from reading this book, that Mr. Rogers that's exactly the way that he would have wanted it. Because there were times where he would make a mistake on his show and the editors, the producers wanted to cut it out. And he'd say, no, kids need to learn that it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. And so to have this very true account of Mr. Rogers, the good and the bad, just goes to show how far his message went. Like I said, the narration of this audiobook was absolutely fantastic. LeVar Burton does such an amazing job, and for me, it was like matching my childhood with reading Rainbow to everyone else's childhood with Mr. Rogers and The Neighborhood. It was absolutely fantastic. You felt the passion in LeVar Burton's voice. I absolutely love listening to LeVar Burton narrate audiobooks, read short stories on his podcast, because he does it with such passion and his voice is just perfect for book narration. If you haven't yet had a chance to listen to anything that LeVar Burton has narrated, please do so. He has, if you want short snippets, he has a podcast called LeVar Burton Reads, where he reads short stories. A lot of them are science fiction. He reads one per episode, and it's just absolutely amazing. I will link that down in the description below, along with the audio link for this book. The other thing that worked for me in this book was that it didn't end in expected places where often biographies of famous people would end. It didn't end when he left children's television. We saw his journey beyond that, and when he came back, and then when he left a final time. And it didn't even end at his death. It ended at the end of his story. It showed us the true impact because it showed us his funeral. It showed us people talking about him after he died. It showed his impact on the television industry, especially children's television industry, long after he died, which just shows you the true impact that Fred Rogers had on people's lives and on the television industry. What didn't work for me, honestly, nothing really. I don't really have any major criticisms. No, it wasn't perfect, but neither was Mr. Rogers. And there's not really one thing in particular that I'd say I would change or I didn't like in this. I thought it was just done really well. You could tell that Maxwell King did all of his research. He pulled in all of the appropriate resources with family and friends and professional acquaintances, everyone that would be able to give some clue to who Mr. Rogers was. So I don't really have any kind of criticism for this book. It was just very well done for a celebrity biography, which are hard to do, especially after the person has died and has had such a huge impact on society. These biographies have to be so hard to not just praise the figure the entire time. There was praise, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of praise, but we also saw the other sides to Mr. Rogers that we didn't necessarily see just on the TV show. And that, to me, is the true purpose of a biography. So that is my 5-star review for The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers by Maxwell King. I highly, highly recommend it, especially the audiobook narrated by LeVar Burton. It was just so good. I can't say it enough. Anyways, that's it for now. My Patreon and my Discord information will be in the description below. Keep reading, and I love you all to the moon and back. Bye.